After one of my dietary videos, someone in my comment section asked me, why aren't you a Catholic? And it's not really a long story, I don't think. If I had to put it in 5 words, simply, I don't see a purpose. Now, to expand on that, it shouldn't be a shock that when I first heard about Catholicism, it was from Protestants. I was told they worship Mary, pray to things they call icons, observe some oral tradition to be used with the scriptures, have this leader they call the Pope, etc. Over time, my views on that shifted a bit, some a little, some a lot, but those initial thoughts played a role in how I viewed them. Even when I was a graduate assistant at a Catholic school for 2 years, my thoughts on it didn't really change too much. It probably wasn't until I watched a video that claimed the earliest Christians observed something called the Eucharist, and that we had something called the Didache, which, from what I know, is claimed to be the earliest snapshots on Christian practices. If anything, it was the Eucharist that got my attention. Beforehand, the brief responses I gave about it was, oh, you use John chapter 6 verses 53 to 56 to support the Eucharist? I'm pretty sure that's metaphorical. Or, oh, didn't hear about 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verses 16 to 17 and chapter 11 verses 23 to 30 before. Anyway, that's communion, not the Eucharist. Wait, what? Communion is the Protestant version of the Eucharist? Since when? So, yeah, that made me question things a good bit. You're telling me that there is a practice that early Christians did, even Protestant reformers like Martin Luther taught, that is not performed the same way as we Protestants do today?
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
That first made me question my understanding of what Catholicism teaches, but I still was not for the idea of the Pope, especially after looking into some questionable things about the Catholic Church and wondering about the idea that the Lord's Day replaces the Sabbath. In looking into that, that's when I heard of Eastern Orthodox. The Pope thing really threw me off. But if you told me that Orthodoxy was the way, okay, that seemed to remove the idea of the Pope. So, yeah, I thought maybe I should submit to this idea of oral tradition. But there were multiple questions that kept me from fully going down that path. Alongside the Eucharist, it was the Sabbath day, the Trinity, circumcision, and the law, and how all these relate to Eastern Orthodox. Now, each one has a different story. For example, the Trinity came up because I planned on making a video about it, and the Sabbath was because I was convinced we should observe it. Circumcision came up while trying to understand Galatians, and the law because it has commands like love thy neighbor and love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. These are just a brief part of a longer story about understanding these topics and how I came there. But they all came together around the same time. So I did what every believer does when questioning things like that, or supposed to do. I prayed. Those 6 things, orthodoxy, Sabbath, circumcision, Trinity, law, and Eucharist, were what I asked God to help me understand. Right afterwards, I decided to look at each topic one by one. Let's do the easiest first, or at least the most talked about, the Trinity. I decided to watch 2 individuals who talk to Muslims about the Trinity often. Maybe they could explain it like I'm a Muslim. I'm not going to name them, but you could guess. In the first video, they were in a panel. Well, mainly one person. One of the panelists stated God had a body, or more specifically, the Father had a body, obviously. The first thought I had when hearing that was, what is this guy talking about? I didn't agree with his position, but at the same time, I didn't really understand it either. It was around the time when, if I watched debates or discussions, I try not to just blindly accept the side I shared before the discussion even started. One of the panelists was confrontational, like it was an interrogation. I don't like judging people based on how they seem. You don't know what they've been through. But when I used to watch this person, he would call another man's mama, or saying that his demons are manifesting, some wild stuff. Anyway, I wanted to hear the other guy speak first, laying out his position and then seeing how it was countered. After watching the whole discussion, I still didn't understand his position. Like I said before, I disagree with it, but I didn't understand it. After that point, I realized I need to hear more from him to get where he was coming from. The next day, I think the most recent video I found was him talking to some Orthodox individuals. It was background noise in my office, but it caught my ear when someone mentioned the Eucharist being a man-made tradition. Once I heard that, I went back and listened to the whole conversation again. That's when things started to click. It wasn't that I accepted it just because someone said it, but maybe, let me ask myself, why I believe the things I believe in respect to Christianity. Just because someone is talking about it on YouTube, not saying it's a bad thing, but before I make a position, let me hear both sides, which led me to really look at other things. Maybe the Trinity isn't in scripture, but it's man-made. Maybe Christ and Paul taught the law, and the people they were arguing against follow some self-proclaimed oral tradition equal to scripture. Maybe the Eucharist was never actually it, but Passover was, or more specifically, symbolically. YouTube started showing me related videos, and I saw other people thought like this too. Things started to make sense. I believe God answered my prayer, let alone the multiple times I believe he answered my prayers overall. Now, obviously, I don't know everything about a specific group. Who does? There's probably a whole other section of stories I could talk about this. But I realized maybe Catholicism, Orthodoxy, isn't the way. Of course, there's way more to it. Even with the Catholics claiming Mary isn't worship, the other so-called misunderstandings I have, to me, Catholic, Orthodox side seem very similar to Judaism, which called Jesus and Paul heretic. To me, it looks like an organization that claims you can't understand the written scriptures alone, and that you need some kind of oral authority, whether you call it tradition or law, that God or Christ gave to show and explain the meaning, often labeling those who only accept the written scriptures as heretics. I don't see that extra layer mandated in scripture. So I remain outside both churches. I keep testing every tradition by the scriptures I have. But for now, that's where I stand. And yeah, social Torah or not, that's a different conversation. I don't understand the issue with it. Because people might bring it up after the last couple of sentences. Maybe I'll make a video about it someday.